It only took me 6 months, but I'm back. Roll the music. Hello and welcome back to Scuffed Hammer, the channel where I make mistakes so you don't have to. During my 6-month sabbatical, I thought a lot about this channel's direction and purpose. I decided that while I'm not a pro, I'd like to start teaching the lessons that I have learnt so that you don't have to start making them, and I would like to start with today's video, what a good base coat can do for your entire paint job. As you'll see from the clips that are playing now, I have two Indomitus Lieutenant models. The only difference between the two of them is the weapon arm and the helmet type. The one with the blade guard helmet has a very bad base coat on it. In fact, it's one of the first models I ever base coated using a less than optimal primer that shouldn't have been used for Warhammer 40k models. And the other one has a airbrush primer on it, and it is nice, smooth, and perfect. As you can see, the older one has a lot of bubbles and chunks and just icky looking stuff, which makes it less than ideal for painting. So I thought that instead of just stripping it back and starting again like I normally do, I'd compare the two and see how much a good base coat versus a bad base coat can affect the end result of your painting. Pretty much every step I will take will be mirrored on the good model and the bad one, so we can find out what the true difference really is. As you've seen so far, I have started with greens and browns before I move on to some of the more detailed colours, as these ones lay underneath the colours that will really make the model pop. Here I'm opting for a true metallic, starting with an undercoat of a light brown before putting the gold on over the top. I have never attempted a non-metallic metal, but from my understanding, it is a pretty time-consuming technique to do across a range of models. So if you're trying to save time and you're not confident in skills, no one is going to mind if you just use a true metallic. And if you would like me to attempt a non-metallic metal as somebody who's never done it before, drop the name of a model below in the comments that you think would be a great first try at doing a non-metallic metal. I might just try it in the future. You might have already been able to tell that the green colour used for the armour looks different. And you'd be right, but it's actually the same paint. And it looks different purely based on how the green paint sits on top of the crummy, bubbly base versus the nice, flat, smooth base. And it's time for the first little bit of detail. I love to do my Purity Seals purple just because I feel like everybody does red, and I used to paint my salamander's eyes red, and so it kind of looked the same. And even though I've switched to doing yellow eyes for my salamanders, I've stuck with doing purple because it just feels unique. I swear this black is the bane of my existence as a model painter. I can never get it consistent no matter what. So if you've got an alternative to this infuriating color to work with, please let me know. I'll try anything at this point. Real salamander fans will know exactly which company I am painting this lieutenant for. Drop it down in the comments if you know. And no cheating. Don't use Google. I'll know. Jokes aside, I've decided I want to try spicing up the way I do my salamander's eyes. Normally I just do a single colour and I leave it at that, but this time I'm trying a few different layers of colour. I think it went alright. It's definitely not perfect, but it's better than what I've been doing in the past. And that's all we need to do in this hobby. Slow, incremental improvements of skill. As long as your current model is better than your last model, that's all that matters. Don't get so caught up on what everybody on YouTube's painting, because most of these guys are just absolute powerhouses. They can smash everything out of the park even if they're humble, like my good friend, the Flashing Badger. You should go check out his channel, by the way. And it follows the same rules as every other social media post. People are only going to post what looks the best. They're going to edit it, they're going to make it look good, and you don't get to see the countless hours of work and perspiration and dedication that they put into this craft before they're even painting models for YouTube. And now, for one of the few differences between the model, the guns. For the bad base coat, I'm attempting to do a Volkite colour, kinda just exactly like Plasma, except I'm using orange. I'm not doing anything special here, I just thinned out the orange colour just a little bit extra, so that it was a bit more runny and pulled in the recesses. And for the hand flamer, I'm using the exact same technique that I've used across all of my flamer models, which you can find in the linked YouTube short here if you want a quick summary of how to paint that yourself. Moving on from that, I pick out the gaps of the armor where you can see the black carapace with a black wash. After that, it's time for the last step before moving on to the shield, the armor wash. And I want your guys' opinion on this. I really love how it looks. I really think it makes the green pop in a way that you don't really get otherwise. But I also feel like it's very limiting in my growth in painting armor, in particular doing highlights and all that kind of jazz. So, do you think that I should do highlights before I put the wash on, so then it's still different to the first green, but it kind of blends in with the wash still? Or do I do it after I do the wash so it really sticks out that it's a different color and that it's a highlight? Or do you think that I should pick out a couple of models and make a video where I try out the two techniques? I know I've asked you a lot to comment down in the comment section, so I understand if you don't want to do it anymore, but it would mean the world to me if you do. Now, it's time for the shields. I basically have these shields down to a science now. I have done 6 Blade Guard veterans and an Indomitus shield captain. So that's 7 shields in total, and with these 2 that makes 9. I start by picking out the bones with Xandri dust so that I don't overspill onto the silver trim when I paint it. Because if I was to paint it second, I would most definitely, with my shaky hands, get it all over the silver trim I just spent a bunch of time nicely painting. This way, I don't get any overspill and I save a bunch of time. For me, painting this shield was the biggest highlight of how bad a bad base coat can be. Painting the shield on the bad base coat lieutenant was horrible. I hated it. My paint just did not do what I wanted it to do, and I made so many mistakes that I had to fix that just didn't happen when I painted the good base coat. And it's also visually the worst looking part of the model. It's so bubbly and gross that I feel like it would fit perfectly in a Death Guard collection. After finalizing the last few details, I cover everything in a wash. I find that Agrax Earthshade perfectly brings dimension to the skulls, but also perfectly dampens the metallic sheen of the lead belcher. And it also happens to be the exact wash that I use for all of my purity seals. So I don't have to get out a whole different bottle just to make it look good. And finally, it's time for basing. One of my favourite parts of the model, even if how I go about it is usually pretty basic. I spent a little bit more care this time making sure that the red and the yellow paint didn't end up on the bottom of his tabard or the top of his foot, like sometimes usually happens. Although with that extra care, I forgot to mix the yellow and the red in the centre a bit, so there's not as much orange on this as I would have liked. And of course, I can't forget the secret sauce of my very easy basic lava bases, a technical paint, which I let dry before I hit the rims with a black paint you can get at any art store. And with that, it's about time for the final reveal. And with that, we're just about finished for this video. From this test, I think we can conclude that the model with a bad base coat does look worse, even if not by much, but was also just a much worse experience to paint overall. So you're much more likely to have a fun time and to stick with the hobby if you're painting with a good base than a bad base, because the bad base is just going to make you want to quit. Anyway, that's it for this video. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye.